Okay, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to talk about the biological foundation of behavior. So when we talk about the biological foundation of behavior, what we want to think of is we want to think of anatomy, physiology, function of the nervous system, function of other systems such as the endocrine system that helps regulate and govern behavior. And so we're going to talk about cells, we'll go down into organelles, we'll talk about the electrical transmission of a nerve impulse, we'll talk about the chemical transmission and information that neurons relay to other neurons to produce some very complex behavior, thoughts, and affect. The central dogma of modern biology discusses how we get information from our genes into meaningful forms. So when we talk about transcription and translation, we're talking about making a copy of DNA that can then be used to produce something meaningful. Because the DNA in and of itself isn't meaningful unless it codes for something or provides the DNA with some structure. Here we have a video that will further describe translation and transcription for you. And what I want you to think of is transcription as just a copy of the DNA. We're copying it, and then we're going to make something useful by translating it into another form. So if you think of language, maybe someone is a translator and they know the language very well, so they have to hear someone speak it. They have to, in their minds, recognize what was spoken. It is then meaningful to them, but for them to make it meaningful to you, they have to translate it into your language. So that's what's going on here. We've got DNA being copied into RNA, and then that RNA is taken to a ribosome and then further coded for a protein. Okay. And the protein is the building block of the cell and what helps make the structures of the cell. The epigenome is something slightly different. The epigenome are protein tags or markers that are on the genetic structure, on the DNA. And what happens here is the epigenome, those protein markers, will interact with environmental factors such as nutrition and will then adjust the way that the DNA is expressed. So what we have with the central dogma of modern biology, that transcription and translation process, is how we get that meaningful information from the genes. The epigenome is the other structure that allows information from the environment to come in and interact with your genes. So if we look back at the nature versus nurture debate, we can see from these two structures and processes that we don't have a true dichotomous debate. We don't have all of it being nature. We don't have all of it being nurture. It's an interaction between nature versus nurture. And so on the exam, if you were asked, provide an example for or evidence for the nature side of the nature versus nurture debate, you'd say, well, genetics and DNA. If you were asked, provide an example for the nurture side of the nature-nurture debate, you could say nutrition and its interaction with the epigenome. And then if you were asked, is the nature versus nurture debate truly dichotomous, meaning either or, you would say, okay, no, it's not. We know that the environment interacts with our genes, but we know that our genes are what we're born with. So they give us our potential, but the environment allows us to adjust the expression of those genes. So here you'll see some references for this slide, for this slideshow, this presentation. I encourage you guys to go read those articles that were highlighted. Some of the content may show up on the exam. I encourage you guys to go read and learn a little bit about Phineas Gage and what happened to his injury. We did talk about it a little bit in the last lecture, in our first lecture in the introduction. And so I encourage you guys to go back to some of that and reference it again. All this information is free game for the exam. Please let me know if you have any questions. You're always welcome to email me, and I'll get back to those emails as quickly as I can. Thanks. Enjoyed it.